Mike, you've been in the industry for quite a while.
Be 25 years in December.
And obviously you've seen a lot, so from your experience, trying to be as objective as possible, what would you see as the best practice when facing obsolescence challenges within the supply chain?
I think it's finding, from the open market point of view, I think it's finding the right partner, finding the right test houses, and finding somebody that you're working with openly to protect yourself, but to get the right solutions for the problems that you have.
That led me exactly to the next question. What would be the key measurement to measure an open market supplier?
Well, quality is always the first thing that comes to mind. But with all the test houses out there, I think that's something that many companies can offer, again, from the open market. But Converge, we manage things internally with test houses, with test procedures and engineers, etc. But we also outsource so that we're able to fit to a customer-specific test plans. But I think how to measure it is somebody that you can work with honestly, that can supply not only products that you need, but information that you need. It can work with you to support the products that you need and protect your products going forward.
Yeah. And what about the risk? What is the size of the risk when a counterfeit part, for example, penetrate a supply chain?
It's enormous, and the threats are getting worse and worse every single day. And I think right now, especially when we're in a shortage market where products that are very expensive can sometimes be going for higher prices, and we see that in obsolescence as well all the time. I think the risks are huge. As technology gets better, the counterfeiters are getting better. That's why it's important to have somebody that you work with very closely and very openly that has the testing, quality, vendor management in place, but also has the global reach to be able to supply the products you need and the information you need.
What do you think is the role of legislation and regulation in fighting against the counterfeit components?
I think that the regulation has been good because it's taken a lot of the, it's taken some of the risk out of the equation. So I think that's good, and it's getting people to have a common practice for counterfeit mitigation. I think some of the standards that have come into play might be overkill in some respects, but I think it's a work in progress, but overall it's a good thing. And having companies that are going out and only buying obsolete material when they need it rather than going out and getting material that's currently active but on long lead time is a good practice, especially when you're talking about very critical projects and verticals such as aerospace and defense, medical, etc.
Many times we've seen that the decisions, which is such an important decision about obsolete parts, falling on the shoulders of a buyer. So how involved the senior management has to be in the process?
Well, I think and we've seen the discussions today about the tidal wave of obsolescence that's coming. And we've heard many of the speakers that talk about it's on the shoulders of an obsolescence manager within a company. I think we've all learned today and learned more going forward that it's critical that all levels of the organization get involved because the wrong decisions could be very, very costly in many, many ways. Decisions can't be made based on just financial reasons or just short-term decisions. You have to think through everything, long-term, short-term, quality, etc. And that can't rely on one department. I think that being able to make quick decisions, but safe decisions. Don't take a short-term risk because for financial reasons within an organization, you don't want to make that obsolescence buy when your car is cutting and you catch yourself later down the line where you're in a worse position. So it's really talking things through, thinking things through, and when an opportunity presents itself, being able to execute quickly. Parts don't stay in the market for a long period of time. I mean, we see it from our perspective. There are certain parts that are very short and are required by a lot of different customers. So know that if you're having an issue with an obsolete part in a particular industry, odds are that other companies are having that same issue. So being able to be the first one to execute and make that decision is going to end up saving you money in the long run.
So talking about FOM, this event, how do you see the importance of having such a community to share ideas and practices?
It's actually a good question because this is my first farm event, although I've been with Converge for 25 years and we've had 3 shows now and soon going to have our first one in the US. It was interesting for me, not necessarily to hear the speakers, which were fantastic by the way, but was the workshop and was seeing people from not only different companies but from different countries in a room together that were challenged with certain questions. And when they were first presented, I was very curious to see how that was going to go over, how much communication and dialogue was going to go on. And I left the room very briefly and I came back in and I couldn't believe how much people from other companies were sharing ideas, sharing solutions, talking about their problems, and were really engaged. And then in the dinner that I had, I couldn't believe how much people really appreciated these type of events that were about sharing ideas for problems that everybody shares. And you're not doing it just within your own silo of, hey, this is my problem, how do I deal with it? You're able to talk to it to somebody else that may face the exact same problem or a similar problem and get different ideas on how to solve it. It's a problem everybody's going to face, so the more people talk about it, the better solutions they're going to come up with.
Yeah. Considering this wave of merger and acquisition and the shortages, how do you see the future of obsolescence? What would be your fears and hopes?
I think there's a big consensus that the problems are going to get worse before they get better. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions that are taking place, and you're seeing a lot of very simple little things like manufacturing name changes to the exact same parts, slight different call-outs on the exact same parts. Those present real problems for companies that it takes a lot of times to get that design approved or that drawing approved with a simple little change. Then you take the fact that those parts are actually no longer going to be made anymore. It's a huge problem. I think that is going to be bigger than most people think. And again, it'll get worse before it gets better.